Hi, I'm Mike from 1A Auto. We've been selling auto parts for over 30 years.
Hi everyone, Sue here from 1A Auto, and today we have a 2011 Ford Fiesta in the shop, and I'm going to be doing rear shocks. If you need this part or any other part for your car, click on the link below and head on over to 1AAuto.com. So I'm going to remove the tire, and it's a 19mm socket. With the weight of the vehicle on the tire, I'm just going to break the lug nuts free. Now with my car up in the air, I can take the tire off. I have a 2-post lift. You can use the jack and jack stands at home. This has a hubcap on it. I'm going to take that off first. So with the tire stuck like that, take one lug nut, put it halfway on. So now I can take a hammer and hit the back side of the rubber part of the tire. The lug nut stops it from flying off and shooting across the shop. Now I take that lug nut off and take the tire off. When doing rear shocks on some cars, you have to make an analysis of whether you need to support the rear suspension. And on this particular one, you do. So I'm going to hold it in the center because I'm going to end up doing both shocks. You can do one side at a time. So if I was to do this side, I would put the suspension jack stand over here. But I'm going to put it right in the center. And I'm going to suspend it. And I'm going to actually bring it up just a hair, because I want it to be at curb height. So in other words, as if this car was down the ground. Because when I tighten the lower shock bolt, you want it as if it was on the ground. If not, you'll end up tearing the inside of the bushing. So the lower bolt, that's a welded nut. So you just need a socket for the head of the bolt, and that's a 15mm socket. We'll break that free. Now that I get some movement out of it, I'm going to spray it. I'm going to pre-soak the other side too, because I'm going to do that later on. There should be zero tension on that shock bolt, because the jack stand should be lifting up the vehicle enough to keep the tension off of it. That's a good indicator that I can use my hand. So the shock itself is going to want to bounce up a little bit because of its job. There's your bolt. You can see the oil that came out of the shock. The shock is blown. The seal is broken on the inside of that piston shaft, and the oil has come out. So you can see the rear shock mount has 2 bolts on it, and that is mounted to the body. It is a 10mm socket. I'm going to break that free. That front bolt right out. Now, you can either choose to leave the bolt in a little bit on the lower part. I just push the shock back into the housing. So when I take the back bolt out, hopefully the shock won't fall completely down. So I'm going to take this fender skirt, just this one clip out, so I can get to the back bolt easier. So I'm going to take a little bungee cord and attach that to this. Pull it back. There we go. Now I can definitely see up there a lot easier. Now I've got my extension with my swivel 10mm socket on that bolt, and I'm going to break it free. Wow, you can definitely tell this was blown because the shock actually sunk down into its own casing. Now I'm just going to grab the shock absorber, pull it out of that bottom bracket, and bring it down. Now I'm going to put the shock mount in a vise just to hold that. Use a 10mm socket. Let's see if I can break this free. The entire side shaft is moving, and it is. So now I'm going to get a 10mm ratchet wrench and a pair of locking pliers to hold that. So I'm going to put my ratchet wrench on there first, and then I can take my locking pliers. I got the needle nose style, and just lock it in. And easy peasy. So now I can hold on to the bottom of the shock, and I'm going to just take that nut off by hand and then pull the shock through. There you go. So here we have our brand new shock we got from 1A Auto. And this is the factory shock we just took out of our 2011 Ford Fiesta. This is the way it comes packaged, compressed. So to decompress it, just push down. And you can discard that strap. You can see the housings are the same size. And the length of the shock is the exact same size. The brand new one from 1A comes with a brand new lock nut for the top. If you need this part or any other part for your car, click on the link below and head on over to 1aauto.com. With any new shocks or struts, if they're not a complete assembly, you need to start them. They call it a start because you compress the gases and oils. And the manufacturers always like to have you do it at least 3 times. Let it extend all the way out. So first thing I'm going to do is put my bumper on and then put the shock right back up inside that mount. Our new locking nut. As you can see, it's a lot bigger nut than the factory, and it has a Teflon lock on it, which is really nice. So I'm going to put my ratchet wrench on there. I'll start ratcheting down to the shaft turns, which it's doing right now. So then I will take my locking pliers and lock them on there. Hold that shaft from spinning. And now I can tighten it up. I'm going to get a longer wrench so I can make sure I've got that nice and snug. 13mm locking pliers. There you go, that's pretty tight. Now we're ready to bring it on over to the car and reinstall it. So make sure that your the bumper stays up in there. There we go. We guide that right up in. Put the shock at the bottom. I'm going to take a wire wheel to the threads here, clean these up, and then add another dab of new thread lock. So I'm going to add a dab of new thread lock, and it's the blue strength. I'll just coat the threads with it all the way around. So now I can place this through. Start it by hand. So these are the top of the shock mount bolts, and they had thread lock in them too, so I cleaned them up. I'm going to add a new dab. The reason why you clean the old stuff out is because if you put new stuff on it, then you actually have no threads. You know, you're just coating, it's raising itself up, and it'll lead to stripped bolts or nuts in the future. So now you have to line that top of that housing up. Then bring the bolt up. Definitely want to start that by hand. Make sure I don't cross thread it. I'm just going to snug the top because the torque specs from the manufacturer is only 18 foot-pounds. So I know I can tighten by hand stronger than 18 foot-pounds. So I'm literally just gonna let them bottom out and get my torque wrench. They are small bolts, so you definitely don't want to snap those. Okay, I got my torque wrench to 18 foot-pounds. My 10mm socket. Here's one. Two. Now I can tighten the bottom bolt. 15mm socket. I'm going to snug it up and then we'll torque it to the specs. 85 foot-pounds, the manufacturer's recommendations, at curb height. And that's why I have the post jack there also, and I jacked it up enough to take the tension off. All right, now I'll get my torque wrench. Now we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. Now we're ready to put the fender well back together. It's just a little felt. And that clip is really a one-time use, but I didn't really destroy it coming out. So it should be able to go right back on. Get the pliers and see if I can push it on a little better. Yep, there you go. Okay, now it's time to put our wheel back on. This has a hubcap that has to go on before the actual lug nuts. So I'm going to line up the valve stem to the valve stem cutout. And I'll just hand start my lug nuts. I'm going to snug them up by hand. $19mm socket. Weight of the vehicle is slightly on the tire, and I'm going to torque my lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds. Make sure I go in a star pattern to make sure that this steel rim seats properly on the hub. One more time.
Thanks for watching. Visit us at oneauto.com for quality auto parts, fast and free shipping, and the best customer service in the industry.